Eating is a big hobby of all of us. Eating well is a passion. And I think there's something sacred about sitting with your family or with friends and to share good food. And unfortunately, big corporations often decide what's good for us, and they stock the shelves, and no matter where it comes from or how it's grown or how it's treated, it's food for people. And it's often very convenient. Is it really feeding us, or is it just boxed with some complete, some incomplete information? And often cushioned in words that we don't even really know what happened. So that's a long list of preservatives and ingredients for longer shelf life. Really, shelf life is a big deal. The only reason why we got our product in so many stores, including the Whole Foods, the Sobeys chain, the natural markets, is because it's got a good shelf life. And this is, of course, what preserving is all about. So to me, to start a business on, Mom, this is so good, you should sell it, that happened 15 years ago. And it's been such a pleasure, and it's been such a delight from a little farm in Greenrod to now have a viable business that we're basically selling in Alberta and in BC, and then on Vancouver Island, as far north as we can go, and then places like Edmonton, Calgary. So what's happened in the last couple of years in the food industry is that a lot of independent grocery stores have been bought out by the big guys. Like Nature's Fare is now owned, or our checks are coming from Bilo. Choices Market is now Sobeys. So a lot of small stores are actually changing, and they're becoming big boys. A store like Whole Foods, we were listing Whole Foods for a long, long time in the gluten-free section. So now they changed it out of the gluten-free section, and Whole Foods is purchased by Amazon. When Whole Foods was purchased by Amazon, the rules changed. And for us to be listing a new flavor, let's say, it takes probably 2 days to get all the information in, and then it takes more time and effort, and you have to have a sales quota. If your product goes down 10%, you're off, or you go to the bottom shelf, which has never helped. So I've learned a lot about retail and how food comes to you. And it's always been my sense that we really truly vote with our food purchases. If we refuse to buy really inferior food that actually hurts us, or it has food dyes, then it will disappear. Like we disappeared from the Whole Food stores because in 1.5 years we sold 10% less. They moved it within the store, people can't find it, they're rushed, they don't always ask, you're gone. So this is what's happening to sometimes small food companies, because we're just really little guys and girls. And but all said and done, we grow so much of our own food, we can compete in the marketplace. And our focus is a lot on educating, showing people the value of a really nutrient-dense food that is grows on good soil in a clean area, and that this is not going to hurt your kids. It's nourishing on a cellular level. That is what good food will do for you. And so then the ticket for us has been dehydration. We've got a wonderful large dehydrator. It's all computerized. It's the right temperature. It sits there, and in the morning it's done. Like these crackers, they take about between 12 and 14 hours to take the moisture out. Because really it is the moisture that eventually spoils the food. And it's good that the food spoils because it can regenerate when we put it in the compost and feed our soil again. So this is how nature works, and if we listen to what nature tells us, and nature always talks to you, whether it's soil or water or plants or mulch, just like you heard Melanie talk about that. That's pretty big, and it's wonderful to watch. This year, I think, was a challenge for a lot of people because we needed a lot of water to keep things going. And then, of course, I noticed that in our cucumbers, they didn't get any cucumbers for about 2-3 weeks after the smoke set in. And I think the blossoms or the bees didn't come because usually we just had buckets full of cucumbers. For 2-3 weeks, there was nothing. These are really the first ones that started growing again after the smoke disappeared in the valley. So when you're a gardener, there's always challenges. But my background is really kind of chef, and I love to cook. I've always loved to cook, and I want to feed my family healthy food and have good snacks for the grandchildren, because I often find that the children get far too much components of processed foods that is not good for them. Anything to do with food coloring, it is just so hazardous to a developing brain. And it's shown that food dyes, they can stay in a system of a child for 2-3 weeks. So when there's hyperactivity, things like that, or high sugar, sometimes it's hidden. You can't even find it on the box. But parents are much, much more aware of what some processed food is. So eating well is a ticket for me, and I find huge joy in gathering food, not just from our own garden, but out in the wild as well. So we'll have a little slide on gathering food from the wild. That's free food, growing out in the forest behind most of our houses. We live in this beautiful, nutritious valley that when you're keen to eat well, and you're on a budget, or you just want to forage things so that you have some beautiful dandelion tea in all winter long. Growing a ton of these foods that are sitting here. They're just item in the wild, and if you have a patch of lemongrass or mint, you know that you'll have a really good supply in no time at all. Enough to last throughout the year. So if we can get to the greens. Well, greens are abundant, and we grow a ton of kale, Swiss chard, and parsley because that is the main ingredient in our green Harvest Crisp. I think it's, no, not Harvest Crisp, it is Garden Crisp. And so that's our start. And then to this, we add apples, and we get apples from Osoyoos. It's like most of the food that the ingredients are, they're purchased right here in the Okanagan. And last week, they came up with a truck and delivered 2,000 kilograms of frozen apples. And they process this for us. We started out doing it ourselves, like just banging apples, slicing them, and processing them. But now we get them in 2 kg apples. And these are apples that come home from the Vancouver market back to Osoyoos, and they sanitize the apples and they chop them in little blocks. So we get these beautiful organic, already pre-processed apples. We couldn't do it for the same price or to have more expensive equipment. The carrots, the zucchinis, all homegrown. Beets are homegrown. Actually, that's not true. The carrots are grown in Greenrod by an organic farm. And we've got the kids involved actually peeling the carrots. Kids are always short of money. They're 2 10-year-olds. They're keen to make some money. And so they're peeling the carrots for us. So it does become a family affair. And so you can't get it any closer to home. What can we do with the greens? I freeze some. Anybody here does green smoothies? Some? So in the wintertime, fresh greens come at a premium. So I freeze a lot of my greens. I freeze lettuce, romaine lettuce. I freeze kale. I freeze Swiss chard, parsley. And since most of the green smoothies I put in 2 or 3 different vegetables, I now make bags where I mix it up. Like at the moment, we have Swiss chard available, parsley available, and kale available. And of course, this is also the time that you get your first aphids in the kale. But I find to stay ahead of the aphids, you keep regularly picking the bottom leaves. Where the mamas, they lay like, 120 eggs every 10 days. And every 10 days, those little eggs are now new aphids. So aphids, they can spread really fast. So the minute you see aphids on your kale, if it's a weaker one that didn't get enough water or something, they're the first ones to be attacked. I pull that right out, and I throw them in the bush. I don't put them in the compost. So all of those, you can dry them, and I'm gonna just send this around. I put a lot of marinade on these, and then dry them. So this is a spicy marinade mix. Yeah, you taste it. That's why and I have little cups here if you want to put it in a cup. A little awkward maybe. And so that's our snack in the wintertime. And of course, I still have some from last year. I put it in a cool room in a large box. I must say, when I took it out, it was a little chewy, and I just put it in the dehydrator for 2 hours or so, and it was right back to its usual crispness. So that takes care of a lot of kale, and it's good for a year, for sure. It's pretty spicy, and that's the way we like it. Swiss chard does not lend itself to being dried so much, but I just throw that in the freezer. I make a mixed bag of kale, Swiss chard, and parsley, and that can go into the green smoothies. Usually the green smoothies, I pick berries. I love picking berries, so we have haskap's, blueberries, raspberries, and I find the haskap's are just the best berries for smoothies. They are just the right mix of sour and sweet, and of course their ORAC value is really high as well. So if you ever curious about which food has the highest value for your body, Google a capital ORAC. It is like oxygen absorbency, so that you're on a cellular level, and you can just say, what's the ORAC value of blueberries, whatever. So really nice little thing to know which foods give you the most for your buck or for your work. What was the next slide? Are we skipping one from the greens? Yeah, next one is cukes and zooks. So this is one of our baby zucchinis. I grow greens as well as yellow ones, and I find the yellow ones particularly good roasted or barbecued. And I think, let me say, it's hard for me to cut up the thing when I have the mic, but we use I have some really nice kitchen tools, and a mandolin, I think $10. It's priceless for slicing. So, will that work? And sorry. Okay. Okie dokie. I think it has to go down. So, when I barbecue or even wrap, I make fairly heavy slices, and maybe these guys, I marinate them in usually a thick balsamic. Is that sounding really poorly out there? Kind of.
It's closer. You can move it closer up.
Yes. I don't want to crack anybody's eardrums. A little marinade on here, balsamic vinegar and vegetable oil, like a good vegetable oil, like olive oil or avocado oil. Okay. I would suggest to stay away from anything to do with canola oil, especially sunflower oil. All the vegetable oils are toxic. When you read up on that from any good website, they say it's pure poison for the human body. They change by temperature, high temperature. It just is a cruel thing to do to your good food. And stay away, especially from canola oils. I've always promoted Hellman's mayo because they used olive oil. Now, I saw that they have changed to a bioengineered oil. What do you think that is? Somebody in a lab manipulated the actual oil, or they add things to it as a preservative. When you buy olive oil, always buy dark bottled, this year's harvest of olive oil. It goes rancid. Anytime you open a bottle and it does smell a little funny, a little strong, it's too old. So I'm very careful to buy very good olive oils. And believe it or not, Costco usually has the freshest. They have such a huge turnover, it's almost always this year's. And my next oil will be avocado oil. Other good oils that you use for frying would actually be lard, because it doesn't change at high temperatures. Like Grandma and Grandpa had it right. And so all the vegetable oils are very, very toxic for the human body. So that was that, but anyways, this will make great lasagna. You can make them thinner by adjusting this. Make them thinner so that you can use zucchinis, whether it is green or yellow, and where you can use these guys. If you make them even thinner, you can use them as roll-ups and fill them with, needs to be a little bit thinner, obviously. Or if you want them a little thinner and to roll up, just put a little salt on it for 10 minutes and it softens. Just like when you make sauerkraut, after you knead it, you put a little salt on it, it becomes soft and pliable. So there's so many different ways to use produce from your garden, and that's where some fancy cutting comes in sometimes. So I've got these, oh, there we go, wonderful little tools, like that makes cucumber slices, pinwheels, pretty. And again, if you want them really thin, you get yourself one of these fancy or easy cheese slicers. If you don't have a cheese slicer like this, you're missing out, because it's a tool for vegetables, and it slices like your solid cheeses, like a good Gouda or even cheddar. It slices it nice and thin and super handy. To me, this is one of my major kitchen tools. And so I'll put it in so you can see. So you know how quickly you have a whole bowl of cucumber, put some balsamic vinegar in it with some sugar and salt. Beautiful with green beans. It's our favorite green bean side dish, but they are wonderful to have in your fridge, put on sandwiches. But don't let it sit too long, because your sandwich is going to be really sloppy very quickly. And so that's what I do with this cucumber. The other thing, in terms of preserving it for the green smoothie people, I just slice them and put them into Ziploc bags and freeze them. Same with zucchinis. It's a wonderful addition to your smoothies all winter long. And your cucumbers are very high in electrolytes. The other things that I do for smoothies, with cucumbers, and you can leave the peel on for sure, is you put them in water, throw some of these guys in with maybe a couple of drops of mint essential oil or mint leaves. Beautiful, beautiful, fresh hydrating drink for the summer months. Have a gallon jar in your fridge or on the counter and put ice in it. It is wonderful. And if you have one of those handy little containers that have a tap, that can open and close, put it on the counter. You will see that the whole family will drink more and be better hydrated. Because does anybody make 8 glasses of water a day? And by the time you're thirsty, it's too late. And not being hydrated is really hard on your brain. And I'd like to keep my brain working as best as it can, and hydration is part of it. So that's on the health side of things. Carrots.
So the next slide.
Yeah, the roots. Where's my beet? Maybe it didn't make it. We grow cylindra beets, the long ones. You see a few over across in the other building, because all of our produce has to be peeled. As you can imagine, we dehydrate our food. It doesn't have that killing zone for any bacteria. And then you put it in a dehydrator at the perfect room temperature for, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. If there's any problem with the ingredients, you're gonna be in big trouble. This is organic food. We put manure in our soil. Doesn't work. So these guys have to be peeled. And once they're peeled, they're juiced. Immediately we have a commercial juicer where you just push those carrots through, and before you know it, you have a bucket full of pulp and juice. And so with the juice is poured back into the pulp, and we freeze that. Like a day after it comes out of the garden, this carrot is now frozen, pulp and all, in 10 kg buckets in our freezer. So we make sure we have enough carrots to last us a year. And we just got a phone call from the garden in Mara that the carrots are ready. So our 10-year-olds needed money. Guess who's peeling carrots? And it's amazing how quickly they learn. I think it took them 45 minutes to peel 20 kg of carrots. And they did a pretty good job. And so this is how careful we have to be with putting quality food in from good soil, making sure it's clean. Because I've tried a cleaning machine, a commercial one, it wasn't big enough, and then you still have to top them and tip them and cut them in halves for sure. Well, before all the peel was off, they were pretty much square. Like it's a machine that would peel potatoes, but it doesn't work for carrots. And it took an awful lot of water, and it took a great amount of waste. Waste was double than peeling, and we can peel 20 minutes. I can do a 20-pound bag of carrots because they grow, especially large ones. We've had carrots that were almost twice this big, and it's amazing how quickly it goes. So if you want to preserve some carrots, or if you're juicing, these are the best ones to grow. I have collected seed for years now, and probably have enough to supply all of Seminar, because you have no idea how much seed one carrot makes. You leave one carrot in the garden, next year it will bloom, and it's actually very pretty. It's great big, and the bees love it. So same is true of your beets, same is true of your Swiss chard, and all your lettuce. It goes to seed, and I leave some in, and you'll see the bees are happy, and by the time the fall comes around, I dry the plants, and voila, I've had seed from spinach for years, our own. One thing with the carrots though, once in a while you have to buy new seeds, because I'm finding that the carrots that I grow, they have arms and legs going everywhere, and sometimes they're white, which is, I think, the original carrot. And so that's the surprising parts of when you start saving seed. But I think there's a speaker on saving seeds.
Tomorrow.
See, there you go. And it's wonderful to save your seeds. It's like, ta-da. freeze these whole sometimes, or you cut them in half and you push this out. They freeze beautifully. If anybody, you know, in the winter time you want some color in your stir fries, I find when I freeze them, I chop them frozen in the bits or the shapes that I like. Perfect to freeze. I grew these, but not very well this year. They're funny looking, but I made the mistake of watering during the day sometimes. We're on a well and I have to space our waterings. So sometimes, there we go. And so that's that. I think next.
Berries?
Berries. They're listed. As I said, hascaps are amazing. And we love them and they're easy to pick. Blueberries, I ended up picking some and buying some. I buy them from the organic blueberry farm in Mara. And who doesn't love blueberries? To go back to ORAC value, I did some comparison, like the blueberries have an ORAC value, give or take, 4,200 per serving, or per berry. I'm not sure how much you have to eat, but let's just figure out a cup. Hascap berries have double that. Pardon me? Haha, my favorite berry. I planted 12 aronia bushes, bought at Tasty Acres 4 years ago. I had a beautiful harvest of aronia berries, probably made at least a gallon of juice. Aronia berries are twice the size of elderberries. Anybody know what elderberries look like? They're just tiny. And they go in big clusters, but you don't want to get too much stem in there because they're mildly toxic. And for people that have had a concussion or something, elderberry toxic, arona berry too, they need to be cooked and processed. I had one of the little neighbor girls come up, I like these. Well, that's a first because they don't taste very good. But she was munching away on these uncooked elderberries. And I told her, I think that's enough, otherwise you'll get a sore tummy. Nothing terrible will happen to her, but they do need to be processed. So that is, and you pass that around. That was last night. I finally got 3 buckets of elderberries organized. And because we have a commercial juicer, I just pushed them all through the juicer. And then I cooked them with honey, with cloves, with cinnamon, and ginger. But you can make up your own mix. I just happen to like those things, and I know cloves are so anti-inflammatory. Elderberries are. And so the ORAC value of an elderberry is, I believe it's 14,000 as opposed to 400. Wild blueberries are twice that of cultivated blueberries. But the biggest, highest ORAC food are actually Rawsomes. It's like 60,000. Incredible, I couldn't believe it. Acai berries, goji berries, they're also high, but they're not nearly as high as hascap berries or elderberries. So we buy these exotic dried goji berries while better food is grown right under our own noses. So when you have a look at that, go on your computer and go to ORAC value. And it is the oxygen absorbency rate, which really tells us what the food actually does for us, for our gut, for our heart, for just cellular nutrition. And since we've got about 50 trillion of those little suckers in ourselves, we better make sure we look after them. Right? Keep it clean and eat clean.
Do you mainly freeze them?
Yes. Now, elderberries, aronia berries, any kind of berry, most of you make jam or freeze strawberries and raspberries, and that works great. They're such a good addition to your smoothies in the morning. And I often make a smoothie like a big, blender full, And I put one in a jar in the fridge and the other one gets finished in the morning. So, but because we have all the produce right under hand, you can throw some chopped celery in there, anything really. But I find if you use fruits like apples, are very juicy fruits, the smoothie separates. And what I then do is I add an avocado. And I am very ambivalent about avocados. They come so far away, but they're so delicious and they're so good for us. So, and you can freeze avocados and chop it in little blocks and use them in your smoothies for these wonderful rich oils that they give, and it also is smoothness. Let me see, what do we got? Oh yeah, we're looking at elderberries. Another quick note on elderberries, I have them dried. You can pass this along. That is the full one. I've made the elderberry syrup. I don't put a lot of honey in, and I often put a teaspoon in like a kombucha, things like that. And or just take a teaspoon a day, 1 or 2 teaspoons a day. It just builds your immunity like crazy. It is wonderful, wonderful food. And I think it's important that we really nourish our body so that our immunity is strong and healthy, and so that when a little sniffle comes around, it's gone the next day. At least that's what happens in my house. Even the kids, they get a teaspoon of elderberry and their colds disappear. Because school's in, so you know what happens. The kids come home with colds. Oh yeah.
Are they cooked and dehydrated then, or?
No, they are dehydrated. Yeah.
Just dehydrated?
Yeah, I just dehydrated them, and then often that's for tea. I make elderberry tea. And again, I also have dried and dehydrated elderberry blossoms. They have the same health benefits as the berries, and the elderberry blossom tea is absolutely delicious. Love it. And you can find them in the wild. And I've planted elderberries as well, and the first one is now 4 years old. I didn't water it once, and it was the first thing that bloomed. And had berries, beautiful big berries in really poor soil. And it was the same with the aronia berries. They are planted beside our house, beside the driveway. By the time the berries were on that plant, I started watering them with just a soaker hose. They're beautiful. And I watered them maybe twice in this heat. So I think it's a very, very hardy plant. They grow about this tall and much, much easier to pick. You can pick them by just raking them off like a bear's claw, raking them off and they're in the bucket, not this tedious, tiny little elderberry. And I wish I would have brought some, but you can tell like from that how small they are, and they haven't shrunk that much. And an aronia berry is almost the size of a blueberry. So,
May I share how I deal with elderberries?
yeah.
So I grow elderberries as well. You can get the canes from elderberry grove so that you actually know what kind they are, and it's good to have a couple different varieties. You can actually literally stick the cane in the ground and it will develop roots and it will grow a tree eventually. They are enormous. But you clip off the ripe berries, they'll be dark purple. They'll be to the point where all of them are purple and they'll want to fall off. I just clip that, I put it in a bag, I stick it in the freezer until I'm ready to deal with it. And then when I'm sitting and watching a show in the winter time, I take them out of the freezer and I sit there with a big bowl and I just kind of tickle that little frozen clump, and they just fall off into the bowl.
Fork.
And you can use a fork, but when they're frozen, they just fall off.
Yeah.
And then I take all of that, I take that bowl, I put it back into a freezer bag, and now I've got an entire gallon-sized freezer bag, so that when I want to make a batch of elderberry syrup, I take about 2 cups of the frozen elderberries, stick it in a pot with a bit of water, and just simmer on low. Then you press the juice out. I just put it into a very fine meshed colander. I just press the juice out. That juice then gets mixed with some honey or apple cider vinegar, and that's your elderberry syrup that you've made yourself. That costs about $30 in the store in a bottle. So it's a really simple and easy way to boost your immunity.
And it's wonderful, like when I look at it and my husband says, what on earth are you spending your time on? I said, John, $500 right here. End of conversation. Maybe it's our background, I don't know.
So you use honey, cloves, and cinnamon? Or?
And ginger. Yeah, and not all the time. If I don't have ginger, it doesn't get ginger. But I usually have all those things. And I went to the honey farm out Grinrod and Monk Road and got a whole bucket. $140. But it was 23 pounds, so it comes out to about $6.50 per pound, which is very good. And you can buy more local honey. I just have a wonderful conversation with the beekeepers next door. And oh man, I've been thinking about having a beehive for a long time.
Do it.
Coming up,
Actually do it.
coming up on Sunday at 2:30.
There you go.
Bee presentation.
It's really, really cool. Yeah, I don't know why that is, but my days are too short sometimes. Let's see, what's next up? Foraging on the wild side. Now, this is where you kind of, afterwards, you can all come around, or you can pass these around and have a sniff. So dandelion blossoms, leaves, and roots are so good for us. And yes, it's a weed and daddy, but between the rabbits and us and harvesting, I usually go in the bush behind our house, beautiful, beautiful, fresh dandelion leaves. And I do tuck those in a freezer bag too, and I do tuck them in my smoothies. I mean, dandelion are the first greens that the bears will eat. They need to cleanse their liver from just sitting around doing nothing and get rid of what the body stores when it's still alive. And that's the first thing that is forageable for the deer, for the creatures in the forest. It is hugely beneficial. Not only are the leaves and blossoms really good for us, it makes quite a nice tea actually. So is the roots. And this was really kind of one of those simple things. These are roasted dandelion roots. And I know you can, some people, they buy the dandy coffee, because it is kind of like a coffee flavor, right? But it is a terrible amount of work. It is like, first you dig out the roots, and then you have to scrub them. Then you kind of dry them. I usually just dry them in a plate. And then you get this. So, smell? I'll give you the lid too. Yes, going. So all the others, they're listed there, and most of them are dried for tea. Stinging nettle, milk thistle, wonderful liver food. Like most of the green foods, they nourish your liver like crazy. Get rid of junk that doesn't belong there and improve your digestion and your bile function in your body. Then, last one. Okay, fermentation. So here's all the dried goods. And how did that kale go around? Anybody asking, has it been around?
Yeah.
Oh, well done.
What on it?
What?
What's on it?
Apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, salt, cayenne, garlic, and onion, turmeric, and nutritional yeast. Anybody wanting to make this for yourself, just email us, orders@okanawawrawsome.ca, and we'll send you the recipe. And you don't have to put cayenne in, and you can, just switch it around to your own liking. Lots of people just put a little bit of garlic salt or fresh garlic and oil on them, and then you can dry them in a very, very low oven. So all of this, one thing, mullein. Does anybody know what mullein looks like?
Yes.
If you go to any, long stalk, yellow flowers for a while, and then a fuzzy, kind of rather big leaf. Mullein is really good for your respiratory system. I find oftentimes when I have that little tickle at the end of your throat, I make mullein tea. Often a green tea with half mullein and 1 bag of green tea. Highly palatable. You can put some honey in, and I find it goes away. From the leaves, but the flowers can also do the same thing. Oftentimes, the whole plant, you don't want to chew on a stalk. It dries beautifully. One last word on drying herbs and small, like even parsley and like lemon balm, mint. I don't put them in a dehydrator. I put them on a plate in a cool place in a basement. And it takes a little bit longer, but it remains much more nutritious, and it maintains its color. So don't put your leaves drying in the sun. You know, that's fine for tomatoes if you want to make a tomato paste, but it's not good for your tender little leaves. So you can have a sniff at those things. And a quick word, we also started making our immunity blend. Lots of turmeric in there and really, really nourishing food. And you can take the lid off and smell these. We are selling them at the market for $10, $12 or online. Like all our stuff is available online because we have some products that we only sell online because we don't want them in the stores. And pick up at the farm, you get an extra 15% off. So if you're ever out Grimlock Way, you can actually order online and just pick it up. We'll put it outside and take a little drive and have a visit at Farmer John's and make a day of it. Fermentation, a little trickier. Oh, this is also one of the things. Homegrown celery does not look like it's in the store because maybe it doesn't. It's more dense and the flavor is more dense too. It's not something you want to put celery sticks, you know, on a salad. You can if you slice it thin enough, and it slices just fine on a mandolin. But I slice it, dry it with onions, sometimes with onions and carrots and parsley, soup mix. So super handy. You don't have to buy food in the grocery store when it's at a premium coming from Mexico or further. So this is like the pantry things. This is 2 years old. It's been in a dark pantry, and it's still beautiful. For those days you want to make a soup, all of these things, some dried mushroom on sale, and I just slice them and dry them. And for an addition when it needs it. Tomatoes, we missed the tomatoes. You can dry this powder, you should pass that along. You can dry your tomato slices, just slice them. Look at this nice little heart. And dry them, but you can't blend them dry. They are too tough. So what you do, if you want to blend it into a powder to add to a soup or any kind of pasta dish, it is so flavorful and so intense, you need to freeze them. When it's frozen, when you freeze those dried components, you can actually put them in a high-speed blender and make it into a powder. And that's, you know, where you could add it to your smoothie. So these are lobster mushrooms. It hasn't been wet enough in the last few years. This is like 3-4 years old. I find lobster mushrooms, even dried, you need to rehydrate them and then slice them, and it tastes a little bit like chicken. I do some fancy cooking sometimes. I have a husband, very distinct flavors. I never tell him what's in it. Because once he knows, all of a sudden what he thought was delicious, I knew something was different. So, yeah. Right? That's what we do. Fermentation. I love fermenting, but I mostly do sauerkraut. What I do with sauerkraut, sometimes I add a beet, sometimes I add some carrots, which makes it more colorful, and also the more different kind of roots you use for fermentation, the more you feed your gut. And beets are amazing food. I have dried slices of beets. You need to marinate it to make it tasty, but it's pretty chewy. I find I cook beets, slice them, put a beautiful marinade on them for a balsamic vinegar and some oil, and have a big pot in the fridge, and I have some beets almost every day. Beets are so good for us. It is heart healthy, it's blood healthy. Athletes use beet juice for that extra 10% of oxygen that is being absorbed on your cellular cellular level. So beets. Back to fermentation. Fermentation is easier than you think. And I've had some misses. I've had some, ooh, this smells bad, and then realized it was just the top layer and you can scoop it off. I do them in jars, and where's that box? No, the little box. Here, right in front of you. So you can buy either on Amazon, I bought this at Nature's Fair. They are lids to fit in a mason jar, and they keep the cabbage under. If it's not submerged, it will go, your sauerkraut will go bad. So you must always make sure that when you are slicing, putting maybe a tablespoon of salt on 3 cabbages, it doesn't need much, just use pickling salt. And it needs to stay submerged because it starts to work, right? And you find some of the juices flow over the jars, and if you don't check it, the top layer of sauerkraut or whatever you are trying to ferment will go badly, and when it's exposed to oxygen. So when you are fermenting in a mason jar, these are super handy. I mean, you can sterilize a rock and do the same thing, but it's hard to fit it, and this is a perfect fit. So I would imagine that you can order them on Amazon, because I haven't seen them in too many stores, but I find they work great. There's 4 in this little box, and I think they're probably $5 each, but for me, that's worth it. And you can leave it in when you store it, or once it's fermented, you can put a lid on, put your sauerkraut in the fridge for a day so it's really cold, and then leave it in a dark, cold place. A lot of people are having some beautiful cool rooms, so good storage. Any questions?
That one berry that you were talking about, I've never heard of it. What was it?
Aronia. It's Aronia. Aronia. It's beautiful, and it's a lovely compact bush. I usually, pardon?
Turns bright red in the fall.
Turns bright red, just like blueberries. And it's easy. I prune the little bushes, thin them out a little bit, or get them off the ground a little. And it's so nice there beside, like when you can just pick things and harvest around your own house if you're just so fortunate, or have boxes. It's an amazing amount of garden produce comes out of boxes, and there's less weeding. But
What about mulberry?
mulberries, amazing berries. I'm not familiar with it. I know what they are. Yeah, they also have an incredible oral value. Yeah, and it's in the wild, choke cherries. And what Melanie said about the elderberry harvesting, I did 2 batches. One, the berries from our back of the house in the hot sun, they were ripe. So I have a spot where I always pick my elderberries. They made a hedge of elderberries around that place. They weren't as ripe, and it didn't work. The freezing bit did not. I could not comb them off when they were frozen. What some of the people are doing, they have a screen and they rub the frozen berries over the screen. I have not been able to find the right size screen, and it got a little tedious picking the stems out. And not to worry if you have a few little stems in it, it's not going to kill you. you know. So, but anyways, the elderberries are just about ripe right now, but they could almost like fall in your hand. Make sure they're really dark purple. Yeah. They need to be cooked. Yes. No, also aronia is the same cousin, and they need to be cooked. Yeah. Try it. Just give it a try. See if your belly hurts or you're doing fine. They don't taste very good. Yeah. Well, obviously, you're still here. You know, it seemed to hurt you.
But they're not toxic, fresh or
The leaves and stems, check it out what percentage it is. Like, I sometimes find the information that we get from big corporations, oh, can't have that. Same with expiry dates. Whether it's medicine or anything else, there's an expiry date. Oh, it lasts for years. There's a lot of marketing attached to expiry dates. So depending. So buyer beware. Yeah. We're all good? All right.
Make the wine from